Thank you, everyone, for listening to Soul Talk with host Jeremy McDonald, the author of Peace Be Still. You can check out more about our shows or about Jeremy at soultalkradio.org and jeremymcdonald.net. And now for our show.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for listening to Soul Talk. And we got a really great guest on tonight who is the author of the book, The Collapse of Materialism, Visions of Science, Dreams of God. Philip Comella is a lawyer, visionary futurist, and host of the popular radio show Conversations Beyond Science and Religion podcast at www.webtalkradio.net. His book, The Collapse of Materialism, Visions of Science, Dreams of God, is a culmination of decades of work committed to developing a new, incredible scientific paradigm to unify the physical world of science with metaphysics of religion. He lives with his wife and daughter in Glen Ellen, Illinois. How are you doing, Philip? Thank you for coming on the show tonight.
Hey, I'm great, Jeremy. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Actually, one of the first questions I just want to throw out at you is that you're unifying the physical world of science with metaphysics of religion. That is an extraordinary feat because I know that other authors have attempted to do that or have worked on that same work as well. What makes your work different, or how did you come to that type of work?
Well, I think that, to do it sort of fresh, you have to take down the existing scientific paradigm and the existing religious paradigms, and you need to try to build them up again. The fact of the matter is that we live in a materialistic worldview where everybody sort of has this default belief that matter came first, that we're creatures of the Big Bang, consciousness arose from the brain, we crawled out of a primordial soup, and we forget that there's another way to look at things, which is called idealism, also known as a mind-first worldview. So what my book is sort of an updated view or updated story of idealism, where I try to look at the world logically from an idealist standpoint, which is a mind-first or inner towards the outer worldview. And when you do that, I think there is a way to unite science and religion. A lot of people who go into this field, it's like they try to make political compromises by keeping the pieces in the same shape, like trying to jam the book of Genesis into the Big Bang or vice versa. So what I've tried to do is to take it all down and build it up again, while at the same time trying to explain the very phenomena encountered, described by modern science and religion. So that's sort of a quick overview. It took me a long time because it's not an easy thing to do it, because you've got to sort of go through the big thinkers and figure out what they taught us and how we can move beyond their thinking and incorporate those ideas into a new world picture.
Do you think that the fact that you're an attorney, did that help you in this process, because you're training as an attorney, or did that affect how you did this work, or?
Well, I think that the training as a lawyer was very, very helpful, and because lawyers are trained to be critical thinkers, right. And it's like anything else. When I look at an argument that an expert makes, for example, in a court of law, you're always looking for what is the evidence to support the theory and what's the logic of the argument. It's exactly the same approach science uses, and I think it's the same approach we should use when being confronted with the belief systems of religion. We should ask what's the evidence for it and what's the logic. And I could say the same thing about the paranormal, life after death, synchronicity, holistic healing. You go on and on. So I take the same approach, whether it's someone talking about the multiverse and dark matter and dark energy in the scientific field, or whether it's someone talking about Jesus Christ rising from the dead, or whether it's a channeler speaking to ascended masters. I'm always asking the same question: what is the evidence and what's the logic of the argument? So I think that the legal training has been very helpful. It's also allowed me to keep one foot firmly grounded in the real world, in practical reality. I would love to, but I don't walk up into the mountains and sit by a tree and meditate. Again, I have nothing against that, and I wish I had time to do it. But I am immersed in the real world at the same time. I'm trying to change the way we think about the world. So the training's been very good.
Yeah, well, so it taught you almost to have an objective mind with it, and kept you grounded, probably.
Right. And that's important. Yeah. That's important stuff.
That is very important. So I think oftentimes when we study our metaphysics, we get lost in the excitement of the paranormal, all the sensations and all that stuff, that we lose sight of that we're still very physical.
Right.
We are spiritual beings. So I follow where you're going with that. So can you explain the concept of what is material? I'm just asking you what materialism is to you. Obviously, I could think of a three-dimensional world, all of that, but what is your explanation of that materialism?
Okay. So materialism is really the default worldview, and it's something that it's so natural to us that we take it for granted. But its core elements are as follows. First of all, ultimate reality to a materialist is a particle. It's a mindless thing. Example would be scientists are looking for the God particle in the Large Hadron Collider in France and Switzerland, because they think that ultimate reality is going to be some fundamental particle. That there is no separation. That there is a separation between spirit and matter. That spirit, such as our beliefs, inspirations, intentions, cannot affect matter. That only materialistic things can affect us, that there's no purpose in the world because particles don't have any purpose. If you read the leading scientists, such as Richard Dawkins or even Stephen Hawking, they don't see that the world's going anywhere because particles don't have any direction. And I think one of the most important things, in addition to those about materialism, is that it separates us from other people. It separates us from God, and it separates us from ourselves, from our true natures. I think that, as you mentioned, that we're really spiritual beings, having a physical experience, just like Pierre Desjardins said, but we have sort of imprisoned ourselves with this mistaken belief that we're really robot vehicles, and I think it's this belief. Example would be genes. Genes are the parts of the machine. And there was a time there with the Human Genome Project, for example, when biologists thought, okay, we're going to uncover the parts of the machine, which is going to be the human genome, all the genes, and then we're going to manipulate these genes and make everybody live forever, make everybody happy, and cure all diseases. Well, as you probably know, it hasn't turned out that way. We are not mechanical creatures. In my opinion, that they're metaphors for what we really are. We're really spiritual beings being expressed through the physical world. So materialism, if you got to say anything about it, it really is a directionless world without meaning, without purpose, where spirituality, paranormal, parapsychology, dreams, inspiration, that they're really secondary. They either don't exist or they're of no importance. And I think that this worldview is, I think and I hope, I think this worldview is on its end days. It's outlived its usefulness. It's time to get on a new horse. It's time to look at the world differently, and view ourselves as what I think we truly are, which is unlimited spiritual beings.
Well, and I think that's where we're learning to be merged, both consciousness, the logic with the spiritual, and becoming into wholeness. instead. Right. Hence the name of your book, Collapse of Materialism.
Right.
And we're merging science and God back together.
Right. And you put your finger on it. That my thing is that I didn't have a revelation, although I wish I did. I didn't have, this book was not channeled to me. Yes, there was inspiration involved, but I need to be logical. I'm not from Missouri, but I like the theme of Missouri, the show me state. I like to see the evidence for something, the logic behind it. But my feeling is that why can't you be spiritual and logical at the same time? And in our worldview, we sort of think, well, the scientists are the logical ones, and religion's based upon revelation, and there's really no logical or rational foundation for these beliefs. And I say, time out. Maybe you're not looking hard enough.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm trying to do in my book, Jeremy. I'm trying to show that we can combine these two fields if we just get rid of these unnecessary assumptions and think through it one more time with an open mind.
Absolutely, and I think where you're really helping a lot of people here is that I'm sure you've met them as well. There's people that are way on the other side. They're so far into the spiritual realm or the metaphysical realm or whatever it is they play in, right. And they've lost touch with the physical.
Right.
The other side, and so they've lost that balance. So,
that's a good point.
Yeah. So I think you're really explaining. Now, and I was actually one of those people at one point until I started studying philosophy and realized that there's a logical order to everything, and
right.
You don't have to get. There's a balance. So, very cool. So actually, it's interesting. I'm just kind of looking at some of your talking points here, and I think one of my favorite ones is I just want to kind of get what you feel on this. And the question here says, are you saying that the Big Bang did not occur? And I got a feeling we're going to be in alignment on this, but I wanted to ask that question. What your thoughts were on that?
It is one of the most. There's certain things like if you're taking a multiple choice exam for are you civilized or intelligent, and you will, I think two of the questions would be, do you believe in the Big Bang and do you believe in Darwinian evolution? And most people think, well, you have to believe in these things in order to be intelligent. And that's really, particularly for Darwinianism, it is really sort of the ticket to being rational if you read a lot of the books by the leading scientists. Which I've read a lot of these books by, as I've already mentioned, Richard Dawkins, and then there's Daniel Dennett and the whole God delusion crowd, where they say that if you don't believe in such things as Darwinianism or the Big Bang, that you're nuts. But put that to the side. Look at the actual theory itself, and this is what I'm trying to say about. This is what I say about the Big Bang. Forget about what you're supposed to believe. Let's look at what this theory really says, and what it says doesn't make any sense. Okay, so I do not think the Big Bang occurred. I think it's a metaphor. Emerson said very famously. He said something along the lines of parts of speech are metaphors, because the whole of nature is a metaphor of the human mind. And we forget sometimes that science is about metaphors. They make pictures. And I think, and they try to explain the world through their pictures or their models. And the Big Bang is a model. It's a materialistic model of creation. It's an artist's conception, so to speak. And I could get into the details, but when you walk through the details of the Big Bang, and it's in my book, it doesn't make any sense, at least to me. And frankly, folks don't understand, I don't think, because the scientists have not really advertised this. But there's one new feature of the Big Bang. It's called the inflationary Big Bang, that A, doesn't make any sense whatsoever, because it says the universe happened to inflate by 10 to the 45 times, not 45 times, 10 to the 45th power. in the blink of an eye. And the only reason they say that is because the original model of the Big Bang showed evidence of design, of fine-tuning. And they can't have any fine-tuning in a materialistic world. So I'm very radical on this, Jeremy, as you probably noticed. But I think that, we've sort of been sold a bill of goods. Believe in the Big Bang, but at least read up on it and question a little bit. And I think that's one thing I hope my book does for readers. It gives them the other side of the story, okay, in a rational way. It doesn't say, the book of Genesis is right, don't believe in the Big Bang. No, I don't say that. I say, let's look at the evidence for the Big Bang, and when you add it all up, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I also want to add, I read recently where something like over 50% of the American public doesn't believe in the Big Bang either. So maybe I'm not that radical after all. But it's definitely an interesting topic.
Well, it's something it's funny because we are kind of have that shoved on us, that theory. And growing up for me, just in my religious upbringing, that wasn't very accepted in my religious upbringing. Yeah. But I think it seems that the way that the universe flows in natural law, even when we're thinking about that, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But if I'm thinking about it, the model idea that you're talking about actually makes a tremendous amount of sense, because I've always said that scientists are speculating theory and then testing it and observing it to see if it was real. But then how do you observe the Big Bang when it happened previously?
Right. Let me just summarize very quickly what I consider to be the 3 or 4, I'm going to say, critical flaws of the Big Bang. A, how did something come from nothing? How did 100 million galaxies, each filled with 100 million stars, where did all that stuff come from? If you ask the Big Bangers, their answer is they have no idea. They just assumed all that matter came from nothing. There's a book by Leon Letterman, a Nobel Prize-winning physicist at the University of Chicago, who wrote the book called The God Particle. The very first page of that book says, when someone tells you about what happened at the very beginning, he's making it up. He says it right in the first page. He's a very humorous, candid kind of guy. And so first of all, science has no idea where the stuff came from, which I think is like a pretty major weakness. Number 2, how did this explosion lead to the mathematical order of our physical world? The second law of thermodynamics says that over time things go towards disorder, not order. So that doesn't make any sense. And then you've got to account for the formation of the planets and the creation of life from nothing, and it goes on. But to me, the violations of the first law of thermodynamics, which is the creation of energy from nothing, and then the creation against the tide of entropy, or directly contrary to the second law of thermodynamics, does not make any sense to me at all. And I think that if you just don't believe in the Big Bang, you say, okay, well, let's try out the mind first theory. Everything starts falling into place, and I think that means something in the field of science. So anyways, I just wanted to summarize some of those issues, but the inflationary Big Bang, I would guess that less than 1% of the American people even know what the inflationary Big Bang is. But that is now part of the standard Big Bang model, and that element of it is really, really extremely radical, because it really is a mathematical contortion in order to get around some of the fine-tuning elements of the original Big Bang, as I mentioned earlier. So I don't like the Big Bang if you don't notice, because it really says that if you go with the Big Bang, you really become a hardcore materialist. I mean, someone could say, well, maybe God set the Big Bang in motion, but that's just never did it for me. because then you have a miracle between God and the Big Bang, and then you just float around or fly forward with the Big Bang into this meaningless materialistic world. Doesn't make any sense to me. If a mind is involved, right?
I don't think God's that complex either. I mean, we try to sensationalize God, and I don't really think it's quite that. I think there's a logical understanding of God as well.
Right. I agree.
But the Big Bang doesn't make a really good name for a sitcom.
Yeah, it's a great show. It's a really good show.
I just thought I'd add that in. So then, if it's not the Big Bang theory, then what would your theory be? I mean, how did existence start?
Well, my book is about that at the core of creation is a mind. The mind some people call God. This is the united mind. It's the collective unconsciousness of Carl Jung. It's Brahman to the Hindus. It's the one mind to the New Agers. It's the same one mind, unified consciousness that everyone talks about. And minds have a ability that we know through personal experience. And that ability is the ability to dream, to imagine a real world from nothing. And so I think the world is a united dream of God. That's what my book is about. And I put it in, I don't know, it may sound radical to the Big Bang worldview, but I think that if you go in this direction, everything starts falling into place. Because then you have the question, how did something come from nothing? And the answer is, it didn't. We are imagining the world, but we're part of the dream. So the world is real to us. We are spiritual creatures in a spiritual world. And that is something that's I think we're coming to that realization. And that's the rise in consciousness that I talk about. That's the dream of God, and so the dream of God unites with the vision of science, the vision of science being to explain the physical world.
That explains a lot. When you think about the mind of God and just a bang, and so to speak, just kind of hypothesizing here. And when you think about the brain, and when a neuron fires off, isn't that in our brain? Doesn't that kind of like a bang? So could we not be that? Yeah.
I mean, I was just going to say that if you one thing to do here is to treat it as a thought experiment, hypotheses, and just sort of think about it. And I think one good lesson is to read the book of Genesis as if the mind of God was in the midst of creation. And it becomes a beautiful, beautiful story. Let there be light. And there was light. The very first movement into the darkness of a mind, learning that it has this ability to dream. And to get sort of serious for 1 second here, if we haven't done already, but to get serious, I mean, I think that we'll never explain, we'll never know how dreams are possible, but it is a ability that we have been blessed with that I think is the source of the religious sediment and the source of spirituality, for that matter. How is it possible that a mind can dream? And that is something that we'll never know, but it's something we've been blessed with. And Jeremy, I think that's what life is. Life is about learning who we truly are. Yeah. And so I think that this is the road we're on. And today, maybe what I'm saying, it's out of the box, it's crazy, it's wild, it's different, but I think the truth remains standing. And when you compare what I'm saying, I think, to what modern science is saying with all their crazy theories, I think that my ideas stand up pretty well. And I'm using the word "my." They're really older ideas that I have updated, and there are some new ideas in my book, but But I am coming off of an intellectual tradition that was started, as you know, from the Upanishads, the Vedanta, and the Western idealists, and Buddha, and Western religion. I mean, this is coming off of a big intellectual tradition, and I'm just saying, let's go this other direction for a change, and let's stop following this materialistic enterprise. So,
well, I think it's along the lines of you're talking about the dream. In some sense, when you think about what Carl Jung even said, that imagery is the last great medicine. So I mean, that's our dream state, that's our thoughts, that's our feelings, and so you can really change your thought process by understand we're living in a dream.
Right. And the world doesn't change. This is the big thing. The world doesn't change. It's the same three-dimensional, hard, physical world we've always had, but our perspective towards it changes. We realize that we're dreaming together. We're part of a story of God coming to understand itself. And so we find that we are really brothers and sisters. We are a family of humankind. I mean, all this stuff, the golden rule has a metaphysical foundation. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, because you are that other person. And so this is all validating. I mean, I am trying to authenticate, validate these great beliefs, these deep truths we've always hoped were true, but always had these doubts. And I'm saying they are true, and there's a metaphysical basis for them, and let's get on with it. So there's a lot here, and it's something you're just going to have to think it through, sleep on it, and hold it out as being a possible alternate explanation, and hopefully it resonates with people, and opens mind and gets people thinking about things in a different way.
I think the world's ready to hear this type of stuff, though. I think that we're on the forefront. I really feel that we're on the forefront of them really shifting how they think. It's like you mentioned, it's a different perspective of how to see things. You start shifting the way you see things, like a paradigm shift, I guess. And,
and I think that there is some things I have to say I'm hopeful for, and some things, I mean, I don't know what the difference is between hope and predictions sometimes, but I like to think that we are evolving as spiritual creatures too, or as consciousness too, that we're not just evolving in the physical form, that we are gradually growing up and realizing our divinity inside, and coming to and not being afraid of that truth. And so it's something that we're going in that direction. And I say let's accelerate it, because the faster we get there, the more of us could take advantage of this, because the whole idea here is to make a better world, and the way you do that is, I think, by ingraining this new worldview into a critical mass. And so now we are manually controlling the dream, like more of a lucid dream, as opposed to just being asleep at the wheel, which is sort of what we are right now. We're sort of like just imagining that everything just happens beyond our control, and we're just sort of actors in a play that we didn't write.
Yeah. We're being directed by puppets in some way, like puppets,
right.
But we're allowing. Yeah.
Right.
So
right.
with that, along with that saying, I can't remember who said this, but somebody said, when we're dreaming, we're actually awake, and when we're not dreaming, we're actually asleep. I cannot remember who said that, to be honest with you, but I heard that.
That's good. Well, it's something that it sort of takes some time to get your mind around a little bit. One of the key objections, although it's one of these things that if you don't think about it, it just, to me, I think should be true in a self-evident manner. But a lot of people criticize folks that think the world is mind created by pounding a table or something. Oh, I'm hitting this table. You're sick. This table is really hard. It's much more than an illusion. There, I showed you. Well, the problem with that is that you just hit a table, a dream table with a dream hand, and those two things are real to each other. See, I call this new worldview the real dream worldview because we are part of the world, and we have no other world to compare it to. So it's real to us. One of the features of that movie Inception, which is a pretty wild movie about layers of dreams, with Leonardo DiCaprio, whatever his name is. In that movie, he was talking about those were real dreams. His dreams were as real as the other stage settings. That was one thing that was amazing about that movie. It wasn't as if he went around in some kind of misty, blurry world. It was the same thing. So it's something that we just need to come to terms with, and it's just like anything else. There might be a little fear, hesitation, but then you realize, hey, this is a whole lot better than being a robot in a mechanical world with a limited lifespan and no hope for the future. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'd much rather be an unlimited spiritual being with an unlimited potential than a robot doomed to rust away after 70 plus years and without any hope for the future. Anyways, I do think that this is where things are heading. At least this is my best shot at it.
Yeah. Well, it seems that there's an awful lot of us coming forward and speaking about our study, our research, our experiences. I mean, we've got, scientists on the edge of, quantum physicists showing us different things, like Amit Goswami and many others, that are just showing us a whole new way of thinking that most of us didn't even think is possible. And, to know that, we're in a dream or this is an illusion really did mess with a lot of people's minds, and but it was a paradigm shift. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, the quantum theory, I mean, of all and I've had Amit on my show a couple of times myself, and I've actually had him right in my studio when he was visiting here, and I like Amit. The one thing about science, science is based upon experimentation, test, evidence, and the experiments that quantum theorists and physicists have run on the physical world show that the world is not made of particles. That is what quantum theory is all about. That these are not little ball bearings, folks. These are not machine parts. These are waves of nothing, energy packets. I had on my show a couple weeks ago Professor Richard Kahn Henry of Johns Hopkins University. He wrote a one-page column in Nature magazine called The Mental Universe, and Nature published this article. And he said in this article that the universe is entirely mental, and he basically said, get used to it because this is right. And so to your point, Jeremy, this article is published in a leading scientific magazine in the world. And the scientists are saying the universe is mental. What I'm saying is that they haven't ingrained that truth into the rest of their theories, and they haven't indoctrinated it into their textbooks or the curriculum because it's too far ahead. They haven't quite absorbed what it means. And so I think that, the epigenetics is another development that is showing the power of beliefs and the placebo effect. I see that you do spiritual healing, holistic healing, energy healing. All these things are showing the same thing, that the power of energy, the power of the internal intentions to change the physical world, to change the body, to alter the roll of the dice or whatever. So there's a lot of, as you pointed out, there's a lot of developments that are going in the same direction.
Yeah, and it makes me very excited.
Yeah, I know. We're lucky to be here. We're lucky
Absolutely.
to be listening time. Yes.
So can we back up just a little bit, because I just want to cover some. We're talking about some pretty intense topics, which I love. I love that. I love talking about them. But I want to just back up a little bit for you, and maybe go in a little bit of a different direction. So,
sure.
as an attorney, that is and we touched on this a little bit. That's a very different journey. But I also noticed that you have a degree in philosophy. So this might not have been that too foreign to you, because philosophy, as far as I'm concerned, is a discipline in metaphysics, but it also teaches you the logical aspects of things. So what got you into studying this? Was it a part of your constant quest with questions, or was it and you said you never had the experiences, but what inspired you to start on this journey to study this and bring this, this truth to the world?
Well, I think had the thought that there must be a better way to look at things back when I was a teenager, and specifically, I think that people need to get along with each other. I think the ultimate goal here is peace. And I always thought, well, the only way to get to peace is to have folks all believe in the same thing that's deeper than their petty, superficial beliefs. I always thought there was more to the world than I saw. I mean, I was raised in the Vietnam era, and the late 60s, 70s, and there was this vision that the young people are going to change the world. Jefferson Airplane, Jefferson Starship, the volunteers of America, this whole thing about changing the system. And I bought into that, and I think that's true, and I'm still about that. I'm still about changing the system. But what I thought had to happen is you got to go to the bottom. You got to go to the foundation. You can't just knock over buildings physically. You've got to change the way people think. And so I wanted to study philosophy to get to the bottom of things. And this little idea I had about uniting science and spirituality I got about my first year in college, when I read about quantum theory and I read the Western idealist philosophers, specifically George Berkeley, who believes that the world is an idea in the mind of God. Now, he's been ridiculed ever since then, but no one's ever actually proved him wrong. He's just been ridiculed. And so I said, well, this sounds pretty cool to me, because it happens to be consistent with quantum theory, which is saying there's really nothing there after all. And so I began a paper in college to sort of try to express, put down on a piece of paper what I was thinking. And I didn't have the ability in college, the knowledge base, the writing ability, or whatever else, the courage to do this, and I didn't finish the paper. And the book, The Collapse of Materialism, is really the 85th rewrite of that college paper. I just made that up, 85th. I don't know how many times. I've lost track. But it's really a rewrite of a college paper I started many moons ago, not to put a year on it, but many decades ago.
Wow.
So that's sort of the story. And I had to go through a process of figuring it out myself and then putting it into words to try to make it forceful and readable and explanatory, and I hope I came close to that with the Collapse of Materialism. It's the kind of book I probably will be rewriting my entire life, because there's so much there. There's so much more material that keeps changing, but the message is still the same. That everything points towards the same goal.
It's your life work.
Life journey. It is.
A lifetime of work.
Right.
Right. I mean, I have read. I'm not going to lie. I haven't read it all, but I've read parts of it, and I think the way you explain it, it really makes a lot of sense. Even if I hadn't had the years of study I've had, it would make a lot of sense to me. So I would start to put pieces together for me. So that I will say that. So
that's good.
I enjoy asking about those questions, because I enjoy hearing about the journey that somebody took, and it sounds like this has been a journey of evolution for you in the culmination of this work, and that's extraordinary, because I really think that everybody, if they allow themselves, to explore what, as you're suggesting, opening your mind up to, the idea, then they go on a journey to explain, really understand that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I know that you wrote a book yourself, and I read some of it, and I think that everybody, whether it's music, whether it's artistic creation, whether it's a book, a poem, everybody has this voice inside, and I think you need to give that voice its ability to go out into the world. What I'm really saying is that, and this is so important to me, is that we only have one life to lead, apparently, and we could put an asterisk, maybe there's reincarnation, maybe there's life after death, put that up to the side. But we know we have at least one life to lead. At some point in your life, just try to deal with the big questions, because if you don't, you're going to be following someone else's default story for you. And there's many books on this exact topic, and a lot of more and more people are quoting from Socrates, "The unexamined life is not worth living," because that's what he said. He said, the same thing David Thoreau did. He went off into the woods and took the path less trodden because he wanted to figure it out for himself. And so listening to yourself and following your own voice is incredibly important. And that's the number one thing. I did it, and this is where I wound up. And so it meant a lot to me, and I'm living this. And as you said earlier, I have a family. I'm a practicing lawyer. I have a bunch of other things I do, but it's given me sort of an unlimited vision of the future. I do think we're unlimited. I do think that the sky's the limit, and no one's going to convince me otherwise. I might fail, which is very possible. I might fail, but that's the only thing that's going to lead me in a different direction.
Well, I think the question there, as you ask, is that do we ever really fail, or do we just find a new way to try?
Right. Right. I'm trying to be a little sober here for the listeners. I'm saying that I started off by saying that the show me state and talk is cheap and all that is very, very important.
Absolutely.
But what I'm saying is it's sort of, for my radio show, just like yours, I read a lot of books, and I talk to a lot of great guests, and so many people say the same thing. Hit your wagon to a star. Another famous Emerson quote. Dream big, set your vision high, and take small steps, and don't give up. All these things are true, and that is something that I did. I think it's very important to hold steady to that vision, hold steady to your life's purpose, and I say these things because I want. It's very important for me to not be the only one. Luckily in our time, and the folks that I'm talking to, I know I'm not the only one. But there's all sorts of people going in the same direction, taking different routes, and it's extremely exciting. So that's cool.
Well, being a radio show host, you hear so many people that are expressing exactly what you're saying. And all the books that we're reading. So a question, kind of going into a more spiritual realm, not as if we're not already there. Do you think there is a God, or do you believe in God, or how does that work for you?
Well, I don't think that there's any doubt. That there is a unified consciousness, and I think that I would approach it. This is the simplest way I would approach it. We have this thought of God in our heads. It's something that is innate to us. It's something natural to us. And I think that tells us that there's some truth to it, because it's so central to the core of our being. I believe that we experience one world, one sky, one universe, one planet Earth, because we're participating in the same dream, not because there is some one big bang universe out there. And I think that the core of reality, the source of the world, is God. That what we've been trained, what we've learned from the religious text is true. God did create the world. It's just that it's a dream of God. We because we don't criticize that, we think that there's a miracle between the hand of God, like Michelangelo, and this mechanical world. That's not the way it happened. It happened through the miracle of the dream. And so I don't think there's any doubt that there is a God, that it's the same God people have talked about. And I frankly have, to me, I think it's logically necessary. I think it's as true as anything else. So yes, I can't answer that question with any more affirmance than I've already had. It's as true as the two of us talking to each other right now.
Absolutely. So there's another thing I just wanted to back up, because you mentioned, we were talking about, you mentioned reincarnation and afterlife and stuff like that. You mentioned, let's put that just aside, just in our thought process. Is that something that you do believe in, or is it something like, you haven't crossed over that? Or do we think that's like a hypothesis, or what do you feel about reincarnation and afterlife?
Well, going again, to be consistent here, I've talked to a lot of folks about reincarnation. Let's take them one at a time. And I think that reincarnation is possible. My issue with reincarnation is the one-to-one correlation, i.e., the old Dalai Lama that died in the 1400s is the same Dalai Lama that exists today. Or if you're not good in this life, you're going to come back as a hamster. Or I have a little problem with the one-to-one correlation, and I don't think it's impossible, because in my way of thinking, we are like a wave of mind stuff flowing through time. There's this mental energy, dreaming power, spirituality, whatever you want to. There's all sorts of words, energy. We always use all these terms. It's flowing through time. It's taking on different forms. It's like it's revolving like a snowball rolling down a hill. It's going through time and taking different forms. And I think that that one form can perhaps mold into another one. So so to answer your question, I think it's possible. I have a problem with the one-to-one correlation part of it. I do think that it probably would happen by the luck of the draw, because there are some pretty amazing stories of people that claim they were reincarnated, and I'm pretty much convinced by a lot of those stories. The ones on TV I've seen, the pilot, the kid that thought he was the World War II pilot, or thinks he was the World War II pilot. I mean, some of those stories are so persuasive. On the other hand, I wouldn't bet my life on the topic either. So
yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of study. I mean, like Newton, I think in his studies of life between life stuff, and there's a lot of data, I guess, of stories that people have put together. So there's strong evidence. Yeah, but I understand what you're saying. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to add that I do think karma, karma is related to it. I'm a big believer. I mean, I think karma is what goes around comes around kind of thing. I hope karma is true. I mean, karma is the kind of thing that I think it's true. I hope it's true. I trust. Can you scientifically prove it's true? I don't know how. But I think that if you look at the world as one consciousness, one God, that should be at peace with itself, that if you disrupt the unity and you fall out of line, by its nature, you may not have a good part in the next part of the story. So So some of these principles are sort of things that you would feel. They're good beliefs. They're probably true. Are they scientifically verifiable? Probably not. But I like to be open-minded about this stuff, Jeremy. I don't like just dismissing things.
Absolutely.
Because they don't fit into a model, and that's one thing the materialistic scientists do. If you read, the book by Michael Shermer, Believing Brains, if you read that book, but he's a publisher of Skeptic magazine. He basically says that anybody who believes in the stuff we're talking about is crazy. Paranormal, spirituality, God, heaven, all the good stuff. If you believe in any of that, you're crazy because it doesn't fit the scientific model. So that's what I think is bad. I think it's more important to be open-minded and figure out there's a way to explain it than just dismissing it out of hand because it doesn't fit your model.
I saw a lecture with Raymond Moody about 3 years ago, and he mentioned the word skeptic. And he said that the word skeptic isn't what we think it is. It's not a naysayer, not if you go to the Greek understanding of it. It's the one that asks questions, that digs deeper. And so that would make you and I a skeptic, but not a naysayer. We're the ones that ask questions and dig deeper.
Right. You're exactly. When I first heard about the Skeptic magazine, I think I communicated with Michael Shermer several years ago because I thought that he was more of a universal skeptic as opposed to just a skeptic of everything that he doesn't believe in. Because I think healthy dose of skepticism is good. That's sort of that, internal critic to make sure that you're not being sold down the river. And I mentioned earlier about being, critical thinking. I think that's really good, and I would love to if more people would apply that to things like the Big Bang or Darwinism. But anyways, I agree with you on that skeptic. We turn that term around a little bit.
Yeah, very vital. So where would they? Obviously, I'm sure that your book is on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and stuff like that. So for the listeners out there, definitely look for the Collapse of Materialism, and that will be on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And I know that you are on Web Talk Radio. And is there a website that they can go to find all your work and your radio show? Do you have a central?
Yeah, it's called, surprisingly enough, the collapseofmaterialism.com. That's my website. It's in a constant state of construction. There's a lot of material on there, interviews that I've had and done, and various blogs and links to articles that I've written. And so that's really the landing page for what I'm doing. So that would be a good place to go.
Well, very good. I just wanted to touch on that. Now we're down to our last few minutes, believe it or not. I don't know if your show is like that, but I always feel like mine flies by.
Yeah,
so,
I agree with you.
So what are some things that maybe we could cover in the next few minutes? Just kind of open it up to you that maybe we didn't talk about that we could give the listeners to really kind of ponder for themselves and maybe grow from. Is there anything that you would like to talk about?
Well, I think that the number one thing is not to take everything that we hear from the media or from even professors' textbooks at face value. To use our innate questioning ability, not only to question what football coaches say, or hairstylists, or politicians, or Obamacare, but not only to question those folks, but to question the people that are controlling the airwaves, and those would be the scientists and really the religious teachers, the TV evangelists, or even your own priest or rabbi or whatever, to question and to try to figure it out yourself. Go to the original sources, the Bible. Go to read the books yourself, whether it's Stephen Hawking, Lisa Randall, Lee Smolin, Brian Greene, and then read my book and try to see if this new way of looking at things makes sense. I really think, Jeremy, this all begins with the questioning process. And what I'm trying to do at the end of the day is I'm trying to say that the goal of our world, as corny as it might sound, is to unite in physical form that which is united at the core of our beings. We are united at the core of our beings in one consciousness, one mind, one God. This God has a dream of peace on earth. That's always been the dream. That's also the goal of humankind. And we need to go back and find what unites us as opposed to what divides us. And that's corny, but it's also the mission that we're all on. And I think that you got to take time off in your life and just think about it. There's so many books out there on similar topics that are inspirational that go down this road. And I'm saying that we have a chance to do better than we're doing. Let's try again, and let's see if we could agree upon something fundamental and make a better world. So that's basically what I'm trying to do.
So you're suggesting, and I'm 100% there with you, is that look at the core of us. We have the same. There is a, we may be having a different experience physically, but at the core, we're all connected, interconnected.
Right.
So
right.
We're not just the particle.
Right. We are united at the core of beings, and it's everybody. When if you take off everyone's clothes, or at least and they could keep on their underwear or their bathing suit, whatever. But if you strip everyone down, we're all the same. We all want attention. We all need to be fed. We need something productive to do. We need a roof over our heads. We want friends. We want to be loved. I'm not talking about some grandiose mystical journey here. I'm talking about we all are the same. We're all humans trying to find our way, and we need to see that we are products of a miracle that we have failed to recognize. And part of that is taking responsibility for this miracle that we are here about. And so I just hope that if everything works out, 20, 30 years from now, the world will be a better place. I hope it's faster than that, but I'm optimistic for the future, and I really appreciate your delving into these topics with me.
Absolutely. I just want to wrap up real quick for everybody listening. One of the things that I think is absolutely incredible, and one is the fact that we're talking about everybody's at the core. And I just wanted everybody to really think about this, because one of the things that separates us is our unwillingness or our fear of connecting with people based on what we think. Like somebody could see your book and say, well, he's wrote all this book, he's super, super intelligent, he's an attorney, or he's a lawyer, he's got a radio show, what can I offer to be this man's friend? And they're already putting themselves into separation. So what they got to offer is that they have a heart just like you, and they have a soul just like you, and they're experiencing hurts and sorrows and excitement and a journey just like you. So that's where we're all core. We are the same. So that's where we come together, and I think that's absolutely very. So. Well, Philip, I really appreciate you being on the show, and I'm looking forward to the next time you're on the show, and I'm sure we'll cover a whole array of topics then as well. So, and for the listeners, thank you everybody for listening, and thank you again for listening to Soul Talk.
Hey, thanks a lot, Jeremy. I really appreciate it.
All right, have a great day.
Good talk.
Bye-bye.
Same to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.